Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked. Here we go. Your dial's set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. John is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota at Genesis Communications Network. I'm Vincent Finelli. George is with us in New Hampshire. Welcome, George.
Hi, Vincent.
George, you were talking about education yesterday, and we seem to have hit a note with our class. I was on the phone last night with Joey, and I was talking about something that I should probably share with the class. Back in the 1990s, I was a computer consultant for school systems, and I got a chance to see something firsthand. It was software that was sold by a company called Computer Curriculum Corporation. The actual name of the software was called Success Maker. And this was software and this was brand new. This is a kind of thing where we can take teachers out of the classroom and replace teachers with software and computers. So this company wrote this, we'll call it a system. And what it did was, if you had a laboratory, a computer laboratory, let's say 25 or 30 computers spread throughout a classroom, which then became a computer lab, and the students would sit in front of these screens with keyboards and mice, the screens would say 1 + 1 =, and then you get some choices, and then you click with the mouse on the correct choice, and then you get a prize on the screen, and then it would say 1 + 3 =, and it would gauge your performance as a kindergartner or a first grader. And then it would progress through becoming more and more difficult as you answered more and more of the questions correctly. And I was extremely concerned about this because, number one, it said Success Maker. It sounds like, boy, this is the ultimate. Well, what the schools were conned into thinking is that this software could actually replace teachers. Can you imagine that? So all you have to do is buy $1,000 a seat, computer and software, and the company in California, Computer Curriculum Corporation, would take care of all of the material that you'd put in front of the students. And the school systems were thinking, boy, this computer stuff is great because you don't need to buy books anymore because books wear out after about 7 years. And you don't have to have the librarian check the books in, the books out, give them to the students, let them take them home, make sure they're not damaged. So there's a lot of labor that's avoided by having these computers. But you need a computer jockey, and you need, instead of a teacher, you put a classroom proctor or a study hall monitor type person in the classroom just to make sure everybody sits down. The students loved it because it was games. It was something they weren't used to. The schools loved it because they could eliminate some costs, salaries and things like that. What a great idea. But what they didn't seem to understand was that turning education over to some company in California, that history could be rewritten and minds could be shaped. And that was one of the things that you were alluding to yesterday when you called in. And I saw it. I saw it firsthand. And I fought with the school systems by saying, have you lost your mind? And now I'm paraphrasing. Now, I dealt with the county school systems at the highest level. I'm talking about my direct contacts were with the superintendents of schools and the principals. I taught the teachers how to use computers. I taught students how to use computers. I taught the administration how to use computers and how to build computers and how to set up networks. I taught all of that. And I taught them that we should not be turning over our education to a bunch of corporations that will control what our students learn. Over time, that's what happened. We turned it over. George, you have any further comments about that?
Yeah, excuse me. I just got like a tickle in my throat like a minute before coming on the air. So anyway, bear with me. But yeah, well, as we look back and at our age, we've seen, and I mean, I was both in parochial schools and in public schools, and then later in a number of colleges and universities. So, you know, over a span of over a half a century beyond, you get to see different things that were coming to fruition. And you can kind of see where it went now when you look back. Like, you remember those computer tests where they just had those little blocks that you had to fill in with your pencil or pen, and they'd have headphones. Remember, they'd try you with headphones, like I remember in high school, and you would have to mark down on these papers that would be graded by computers. And like you said, and I noticed, they said the Roosevelt administration, they had photographs of Mussolini in just about every office. You'll say, what does that have to do with anything? Well, they were socialists. And I think what they were doing is they said the Soviet education system was planned, and it was bolstered, it was supported, it was funded from the West, from certain sections. And when Roosevelt came in, it would appear as though there was an induced depression. It didn't have to happen, but in other words, a lot of things that could have been done, should have been done, weren't done. So now, when Roosevelt came in, he had a clear playing field where he could bring in a lot of social programmings that had very long-reaching effects, as you can well see, even to the point with Lyndon Johnson and the New American Deal, I think it was, or whatever they called it. But in other words, you can see the ramifications of all these seemingly unconnected programs coming from different directions. But it's kind of like all roads lead to Rome. In other words, all of these programs now have combined and are coming together, and you can see what it's shaping up to. Like you said, can you imagine getting a human teacher with all of the dignity, like I remember the teachers, especially the women teachers. When we were young men and boys, we'd have crushes on the teachers because more often than not, you'd have an intelligent woman there who was, nice looking, and she represented the model of almost like a mother to us, a second mother when we're away from our mother. But at the same time, it had a lot to do with our development. And you can't get that kind of interpersonal reaction with a machine, right?
You know, that's a really great point that you made. That yes, we did look up to our teachers, and yes, they were pleasant to look at, and yes, they were engaging, and yes, they challenged us, and they encouraged us to do better. But the machines are just machines. And I've got to tell you that throughout what I saw as a computer consultant, I was dragging my feet in a couple areas on purpose. And I would tell the administrations, yeah, I'm in the computer business, but it makes no sense to take the teachers out of the classroom and turn over education to the federal government and to these companies. And what was happening is school districts, county school systems would get grants from Washington, D.C., the federal government, to do certain things. So they could buy all kinds of computers without spending any of the county money. And it didn't really work all that well because Joey and I were talking about this last night. We stopped teaching cursive writing. And cursive writing is great because it would run through your brain a little differently than keyboarding. So literally, we took out of the classroom at the early ages of young people cursive writing, and we replaced it with keyboarding. Now, it's really hard to write without a keyboard if you don't have a keyboard. And for a while, keyboards were on desktop computers and tower computers. Now keyboards are on phones. But how does a person learn the same way with typing with their thumbs as compared to writing in cursive? People don't write very much anymore at all. And we've learned that as a result of these flashing screens, whether it be the blue screen for television, the blue screen for Netflix, the blue screen for movies, the blue screens for phones or computers, our attention span has gone down the drain to where the average shot on a movie today is 5.4 seconds. Why? Because we can't pay attention any longer than 5.4 seconds. And if you extrapolate that out, what you find is you hire a person to do a job. And let's say, and what kind of jobs do we have today? Most of the jobs that we have are sitting down and we're entering data about people. That's what governments do. Or it's an insurance kind of a job where you enter data about the customers. Or it's a medical job where you enter information, make appointments for patients. And what happens is these people have their cell phones with them in their pockets on vibrate, or their cell phones are right next to them. I see their cell phones right on the desk when they're making appointments. And there'll be like 3 ladies or 4 ladies all sitting side by side by side by side, and they'll have their cell phones. And so every 2 or so minutes, they get interrupted by their cell phone. Somebody's saying, "What are you doing?" "I don't know." "What are you doing?" "I don't know." "What do you want to do?" "I don't know." "What are you going to do?" "I don't know." "What are you going to do after you do that?" "I don't know." That's the kind of nonsense that goes on. So they're interrupted by their children who are bored. They're interrupted by other people who are bored, and they're being distracted from their work. So they can't concentrate on their work because they're eternally distracted. And if they're not being distracted every couple of minutes, they're looking at their phones to see if they missed something. And then they've got to get back to work. So we have lost our attention span. We have lost the ability to concentrate. And it's all because of computer technology, in my opinion. George, comments?
Well, I hear the music, so if you don't mind, I'll refrain making a comment until afterwards, okay?
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. George is with us. George in New Hampshire, USA Preparedness Instructor, and I will be right back. George is with us, and we're talking about education, and we're talking about the attention span is... my chickens have a greater attention span than the GDP with their smartphones and blue screens. George, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I find it hard to believe, but I believe that they said that a goldfish now has an attention span longer than the average American. And goldfish...
There's no question in my mind.
I saw my sons one time. It kind of like was one of those moments where I had my 3 sons around me, and I said, they were throwing some numbers at me that the cost of something or other. And for some reason, it just didn't add up. So I said, wait a minute. I said, look, so I got a piece of paper, and I pulled out a pen. I said, okay. I said, give me the numbers. And I started. So one of my sons tells me, my oldest, he goes, Dad, why don't you use a calculator? And I stopped. I looked at him, and I said, well, first of all, I didn't need it. But the second of all, what if I didn't have one, I told him. And they just looked at me like, I had given them a riddle that they really had to think about. and I'm not going to say they're dumb, but I said to myself, calculator. I never trusted calculators. I mean, I've worked with them. I was even an accounting technician one time for one of the federal government, but that was another story for another time, as they say. But the thing is, I'm just saying, but sometimes you hit the wrong button, or maybe the battery, or maybe the electronics on it was kind of frazzled. You say to yourself, you could tap in a bunch of numbers, but who's to say the number you get back at the end, unless you have something to cross-reference it, if it was even correct? It could be very costly, that mistake, too.
A very interesting point that you're making, and then we can extrapolate that as well. So that goes to maps and cell phones and GPS devices. So I was talking to 2 young people, and they were going to deciding on taking a trip. And so I mentioned, I knew they had a GPS, but they didn't want to bring it with them because they had their cell phones. And I said, from my understanding, cell phones require cell towers in order for those maps to work. It doesn't work on GPS, at least the mapping part. And so if you don't have cell service, you don't have mapping. And the young people said, well, that's right. I said, so why don't you bring the GPS with you? And you know what? Why don't you bring a map with you? As a matter of fact, why don't you go to the Chinese factory outlet and pick up, they're hard to find, but you may be able to find an atlas, a road atlas. George, that's what we used to have when we traveled. We'd have a road atlas so that we could figure out how to get there. I still have it
in the car, and I know you do too, right?
I do. And not only that, if you want more detail than the Rand McNally Road Atlas class, you can contact your local state government and say that you'd like a couple maps and get one for each car. And then as you travel from state to state to state, if you do, you can stop at these state roadside, I don't know what you call them,
or the
travel centers,
booths.
and get the maps right there. They're free.
Yeah, they're free.
They're free.
I volunteer at one there in the summers, and I hand them out. And the people, if they're from, I remember this couple from England. I handed them the map. They said, "How much is this?" I said, "It doesn't cost anything." I was kind of smiling about it, but in other words, I guess where they come from, everything was for sale, so to speak. Everything had a price tag on it, so
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we probably spend $200 on each map. When we go to buy them with the government procurement offices. So I'm sure they cost a couple $100 a piece, but they shouldn't, but they probably do. It's like that, $1,000 hammer or $1,100 toilet seat that the government buys, but you still can get them without any direct charge to you. And I said, in class, if you have 3 cars, get 3 of them and put one in each car. Put it in the glove compartment or the door pocket. In case that cell phone quits.
Yeah, but, another thing I find, I like the laminating things, but I found a cheap way to laminate. You get that good quality packaging tape, and you just lay it across, and it's like you just cover it up with this plastic, and it's like you've got a waterproof, coffee-proof map there that, you can basically last a long time, and the moisture won't get at it either.
There you go. George and I'll be right back. Class, I'm the most fortunate person on the planet. I'm so fortunate because I have wonderful friends such as George and Joey, and there's so many wonderful Miles, and you're going to get a chance to hear from them today as well. But I wanted to say this, and I don't know how to say it without sounding braggadocious, but USA Prepares is a very different broadcast. USA Prepares is unique in the world of broadcasting, not because of me, but because of the faculty. The faculty is so bright and diverse in what the faculty knows, and the faculty is willing to share what they do, what they think, how they feel, what they know, at no cost to everybody. Anybody who wants to listen gets the information for free because we're all volunteers, every single one of us. And USA Prepares has faculty in the United States, Canada, Guatemala, Australia, Spain, Austria, and other locations. It's quite different. And we're not a radio network. We're just a broadcast, a radio show, if you want to call it that, with faculty in so many locations. I find it very, very interesting and enlightening. And I'm challenged every day by the faculty because they think so differently from the GDP. George, do you have anything that you would specifically like to talk about? I have something in my hand about a telephone call I received, but you go first.
Okay. I have something to talk about, but it'll just open a door a crack that may be able to lead to another program in the future. World War II. man's in a Jeep. He's lost. It's in Belgium. It's during the Battle of the Bulge. So he's driving. He's in, I think it's either Holland or Belgium, but he's driving in a direction where everything's very flat. And the further he goes down this road, he's hoping to encounter some unit of his own or whatnot. The further he goes down this road, the more he gets this sense that he should turn around and just head straight back from whence he came. So he ignores it, he proceeds onwards. So he sees a burning hulk of some vehicle or something that had been destroyed and it was still smoking. And all of a sudden he sees a man step out, an MP step out with his rifle. And he says, "Hey, Mac, you don't want to go any further down this road because if you do, you're going to run into the Germans." So the guy says, "Gee, thanks." And he turns the Jeep around. You know, the Jeep has a tight turning radius. It has a small, it's a small vehicle. And as he's turning around and he goes back and he's going to thank the MP there, he says he's looking at the smoking hulk and he goes, "The land's flat for miles around. There's nowhere anyone can go. There's nobody there." Now, you say, why did I bring up this story now? Well, I've had a few strange experiences. You might even say near-death experiences where basically I could have bought the farm. I'm sure you and I'm sure the audience and the faculty could all pretty much identify with this if they've lived any length of time on this earth, of something that has no logical reason for happening. There's no explanation, that earthly explanation that we can come up with. And yet, these things happen, and it's like something's looking out for us. Some would call it a guardian angel. That's what I would believe. But the thing is that it just came to me because I was talking about this with someone, and we exchanged, a couple of people I knew, and we were exchanging just some experiences. And out of the 3 people, including myself, there was one other person had their experience similar to what the story I just told you. And I mean, there's variations on the theme, but it just tells you that there's more to life than the things you can see.
You're absolutely right. I got a call yesterday from a man by the name of Dirk Hubbard, Hubbard. He's an attorney. And somehow, my name was found in a very short email because of a problem that I had with a product. And the product, and the reason I'm talking about this, class, this is a big deal. This is a very expensive problem. And we've been lied to. And I uncovered this. And I've been talking about this for years. I've been talking about tractor failures. I've been talking about hydraulic hose failures for years, and I didn't understand it. I said, something is really, really, really wrong. So I bought this oil. It's called 303. And I bought it at Walmart, and I bought it at a farm supply company called Orscheln. Well, this 303 oil is now banned in the state of Missouri and Georgia and North Carolina. The reason it's banned, it's manufactured by Citgo, Citgo. It used to be called City Service. And what we have found out is that when they flush the lines, the pipelines, they use a fluid. And like, all right, now that we flushed the lines, what do we do with this oily substance? Well, they packaged it and put it in buckets, yellow buckets, and they called it 303 hydraulic, tractor hydraulic fluid. And you use it in the transmissions and the differentials and the front end loaders of tractors and other equipment. Well, this fluid has been labeled to meet certain standards that John Deere requires, standards that International Harvester requires, standards that the major manufacturers of equipment using specific lubrication, there are standards. And this oil, this fluid, this 303, said that it met these requirements, but it didn't. And so I have this letter from the attorney that I mentioned, and we're going after, I'm part of this, and I have a pallet of unused, defective, mislabeled, substandard lubricant that is destroying our farm equipment. And unfortunately, we've put it in our bulldozer, our backhoe, our tractors, all of them, our heavy truck for spreading lime. It's everywhere. And to get rid of it means we have to flush out all the systems, and we're talking about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of gallons. And then not only do we have to drain it, then we have to flush out all the lines, and then we have to replace it. And it's going to cost about $65 for 5 gallons to replace this defective fluid. Now, what
Vincent,
is... Yes.
I ask you a question?
Sure.
This is a product from Citgo?
Yes.
Now, am I mistaken if I was to say that Citgo is a Venezuelan company?
That's correct.
Now, you know that the bad, let's just say, the hostility between Venezuela and the United States and other countries as well, this could have been just a mistake. It could have just been, incompetence. Then again, it could have been, what do they call it, enemy action, so to speak. Because if they can break down our transportations, our construction, our farming equipment, let's just say it would be a strong step towards harming us and destroying our economy.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
Well, this is a great way to do it. So let me just read part of this email from Dirk Hubbard. It says, I'm just skipping to the most important parts. All 14 of the 303 products tested by the state of Missouri failed to meet basic viscosity tests and also showed to be lacking virtually any of the additives required to provide the wear and other protection claimed on the labels. The states of Georgia and North Carolina have also now banned 303 products, and their testing showed familiar failures by many of the same 303 products, as in Missouri. Okay. The MDA confirmed that purchasers were being deceived since there is no such thing as a 303 spec anymore, since the labels on 303 products were misleading in using some tricky language which would indicate to the purchaser that these products meet specs for many original equipment manufacturers, like John Deere and International Harvester, etc. It goes on to say, they also knew that the products did not test appropriately for use as tractor hydraulic fluid. However, this action was taken with the various departments of agriculture not knowing, but likely suspecting the worst, that many of these manufacturers are getting rid of the flush line wash, other waste oil, and other used oil in 303 tractor hydraulic fluids. There are many potential problems with the use of these ingredients in tractor fluid, which should be made with appropriate base oils and oil additive packages. One of the problems associated with the use of the line wash in tractor hydraulic fluid is what you, meaning me, Vin Finelli, experienced in December of 2016 with the foaming and latte consistency of the 303 you bought from Orscheln. What they're saying is this oil is defective. Citgo ultimately determined in October of 2017 that it could no longer use DROM, that's dark, recycled, reworked oil mix in their 303 formula. They did it to us intentionally deceiving us. And who sold it? Walmart, O'Reilly, Smitty's, and Orscheln. And I'll give you the phone number to call if you want when we get back. Class, let me give you the phone number to call if you've used Yellow Bucket 303 fluid sold by Tractor Supply, Smitty's, Orscheln, Walmart, or O'Reilly's. That phone number is 816-595-7721. 816-595-7721. And you'll be calling the office of Dirk Hubbard, an attorney who is going after these problems. I just did a quick calculation. How much is it going to cost, or how much would it cost if I hired somebody to drain all these fluids and replace them with fluids that do meet the specs? About $22,500. And that does not include the damage, repairing the damage to two of the transmissions on two of the Deutsch tractors that jump out of gear now because of the lack of lubrication that of these fluids. And George, you're right. Citgo has 3,700 employees. Citgo Petroleum Corporation is the United States refiner and marketer of lubricants, petrochemicals, transportation fuels, and other industrial products. But the majority of the corporation is owned by the Venezuelan government. So Citgo is in the hot seat. And I don't think any farmer, once they figure this out, is going to ever buy another Citgo product for as long as they live, because we have been lied to. And you're right. This could be a takedown of the American farmer through, I have lost hydraulic cylinders that have failed from, I didn't know what. It seemed like the hydraulic cylinders would just, boom, blow, and oil would come squirting out. We have it in our batwing mower. It's a 15-foot wide mower that has hydraulic problems. Our tractors have hydraulic problems. The balers have hydraulic problems because of the lack of lubrication in the fluid. So, class, if you think, let me just give you a quick thumbnail on this. I'm talking about 30 seconds. Some people may think that kerosene, which is a petroleum product, has lubricating qualities. It has none. It smells like oil. It looks like oil. It's slippery, but it doesn't lubricate. Okay. So what we're talking about is a lack of additives that are required for the oils to protect the metal on metal parts, or the seals, the rubber seals, or the synthetic seals. George, this is a big problem, and Citgo did it intentionally. There's no way this is a mistake. Greed.
It's getting increasingly unhealthy to live in this world, and it's by design. They take what's good and they corrupt it, and they make it into something that's harmful. And they take something that's natural, they corrupt it to do the unnatural with the natural. And this is across the board. And if you take the word live and you reverse it, it's evil. That's the word. It spells evil. It's living backwards. And you can see that these people now are coming out of the woodwork. They're being exposed, but it's so rampant that even the watchdog agencies themselves have been corrupted and taken over by the very same people who they were meant to protect us from.
No, there are engineers. I spoke directly with a Citgo petroleum engineer. I said, coming out of the differential, the rear end of the tractor, where the axle is and all these heavy gears, I said, it's foaming. This lubricant is foaming and coming right out of the fill plug. It's leaking out. What's going on? I said, well, you need to increase the viscosity. Absolutely. Because the viscosity that the lubricant was supposed to have was absent. The engineers knew. The marketeers knew. The salespeople knew. The blenders knew. Everybody knew. But yet nobody blew the whistle to protect the customer. And Citgo needs to go down. And all of the shareholders need to lose their investment, if they have any. And every one of them needs to be fired for this fraud perpetrated on the unsuspecting. These are lies. The label said it met standards that it did not meet. George, thanks so much for being with us today. Everyone all set? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. I'm delighted to be broadcasting with 2 of my dearest friends, as I was hour number 1. And Joey is in Michigan. Welcome, Joey. Very well. And Miles is in Europe. Welcome, Miles.
Good morning, everybody. How are you doing?
Very, very well. Miles, did you happen to hear what I said about the 303 tractor hydraulic fluid, the class action that's going on against Orscheln and Citgo?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Well, what's happened is Citgo Petroleum has been producing 303 tractor hydraulic fluid, and it doesn't meet the specifications claimed on the labels. So it's labeled as a universal lubricant for farm, logging, and construction equipment. It's claimed to meet the specifications for transmission fluid and gear oil for older tractors and equipment, and it's supposedly a substitute for John Deere's JD, as in John Deere 303, as well as meeting the requirements of Alice Chalmers, Massey Ferguson, White, Allison, Case, International Harvester, Kubota, John Deere, New Holland, Ford, and Caterpillar. And it met none of those. So now we are
Vincent,
wearing out.
Are you surprised everyone is on the take because they see that, or they feel and see that something is on the horizon coming up?
You're absolutely right. I've talked with so many of our instructors, and even people who are not instructors that have an IQ of over 100. They seem to know. They know that we're going down. They can feel it, and it's frightening to everybody I know. Yes.
Well, let's talk about that today, because the greatest distraction that there is right now is the paradigm change in terms of where we came from, how our education was, and what the new education for the new generation global is. We have totally different stances on the viewpoint of life, and this is where we get the greatest cultural shock within our own family units and what is left of it, in terms of being, as a parent, being the enemy at the dinner table and in opinions and viewpoints on life.
And you're saying, I think what you're saying is that we thought we knew who people were, what they stood for, what their values are or were, and we're finding out that that's not the case necessarily. Is that what you're saying?
Well, Joe and I had a couple of conversations about that. So let me do the prelude to what we talk about now, what we started to talk about now by Joe. Joe, can you go ahead with that?
Well, my first thought is, how do you tell when somebody's lying? I mean, because your whole family, everybody that you know, family, friends, people you meet, they're not the people you think they are. So obviously they're being internally changed. Is that through a form of a nano modification? I mean, this is so far out of the box of regular thinking, it's hard to even ask the question. And Miles, of all the people, you're the one that usually can dissect the problem in the simplest form, so even the simple of us, like myself, can understand. So how is it happening so fast that we all know there's a problem, but yet we don't understand it because it's happening so fast? It's like the paradigm shift is occurring, and yet there's left, there's right, and then there's really no common area anymore. How do you break that into something us commoners can understand?
Okay, so little disclaimer at the beginning here. The way that education works is that parents repeat what they learn from their parents and from their school, and they feed it to their children. That worked very well as long as our educational system, the rule set and the morals of the day have been a two-dimensional representation on a piece of paper. So you can take a diagram, an X and a Y axis, and you write values there, like honesty, hardworking, reliability,
integrity, all those kind of words.
Right. So these are all so-called values. Values, what you talk about on the show, are nothing more than a set of mathematical variables. So in terms of, let's take North America in the 50s. We had Christianity, more white population. So you had other values than going then into the 60s and into the 70s with changing the following generation from the greatest generation that ever lived to the Rolling Stones, Beatles, Creedence Clearwater Revival, the Deadheads. You had a new paradigm brought in, and that was that you can slack, that you can party more on. The usage of drugs was introduced through the music. The music was all about getting high. So here you had music, art, movies are used to change the way how you look on life and how you determine how you want to live. This is the so-called individualism that is being placed onto the playfield after World War II. So you have that two-dimensional representation, the X and the Y axis, and now you just decide as the ones that administrate a certain place, like the United States, we want to have honesty on a very high point because they need to follow orders and they need to be clear in their representation of expression when it is in a military combat situation like World War II. So the next generation, you tone that down, and then you have people in universities that are social engineers. And these social engineers are their study courses for that is sociology, philosophy, and psychology, applied psychology. You bring them together and you give out the new goal, how you want the next generation of population to be, and change the value set of them. So what do we need to do? What do we need to engineer in our culture? What do we need to bring in terms of music, art, design, technology to facilitate that change? And so for each country, there was a different set of values and morals that the administration was entertaining. That paradigm, the representation of a two-dimensional set of rules, values, and morals ended in the 90s. 95, when Clinton came in, we had a new representation, and that now was three-dimensional. And it was three-dimensional because now communications turned to a way where we started to have the Internet, where we could start to acquire more information, more knowledge that we need on a daily basis just to live our lives instead of going to a study course or reading a book. You can now have a tutorial about how to repair something, how to do something on YouTube. And that now required a change in how you administrate the rule set, the value set on a population. And you need to have a change in that because you have the word globalization coming into your equation. So because of the globalization, now you have people that can access the same information across borders, and you as administration now need to think in regions. So what did we see in Europe, for instance, like beginning 2000? We had the European Union evolving And the European Union then started to have its own culture. Like, we're not the nationals anymore of a country, but we are becoming Europeans, like European citizens or European members of the European Union. In the United States, it was the NAFTA. It was Canada, United States, and Mexico getting fused together in an economical realm, and therefore you needed to change the informational flow and the informational saturation of how you wanted these people to evolve. So far, questions?
One question for the class. Just a quick explanation of what a paradigm is, just for somebody that might not understand. 2-dimensional versus 3 and possibly 4.
Okay, a paradigm is a system that is put in place that is going to be followed by the administrators of the time. Therefore, you get a
2-dimensional and 3-dimensional.
Okay, 2-dimensional means you have time and values, and there you change the values: integrity, honesty, endurance, body weight, food supply, what kind of food is being eaten. Is it more self-prepared? Do you want the populace to be more in a work camp, and then you supply them more prepared foods? These are all values and sets. These are all variables in the equation of a people that your administration is taking care of. A good representation is Walmart. So if you look at Sam Walton was the guy who was tasked to put the infrastructure in place for the war camps in the Pacific region, in the Pacific arena, and build the logistics for supply and build with the Navy, with the Seabees, and with the Air Force. And because he was so successful, he was then tasked after World War II to pursue and build the Walmarts to have the best possible supply chain going on in the United States.
Okay, we're going into a break. Yeah, we're going into a break. We'll be right back with Joey in Michigan and Miles in Austria. Joey's with us in Michigan. Miles is in Europe. And Miles, you're talking about the paradigm change. Are you talking about something like Tesco, Tesco, a British multinational grocery store, trying to come to the United States with their small stores, prepackaged, pre-prepared meals, and it didn't work in the United States because we wanted to buy in bigger quantities and we wanted to buy for longer terms rather than right what we're going to eat right now, as the paradigm in Europe is being unrolled? Is that what you're talking about?
That's a part of it, and it's successful in the United States. Look at Boston or Seattle at Amazon Go stores, and Tesco is rolling them out all over Europe. The younger generations that have not been raised under the 2-dimensional structure of rules and values, that have been brought up under a digital realm with a different way of receiving and dealing with information through informational technology, through the internet, is a success story. And it's very convenient. So let's speed that up because it can get very complicated. I want to try to make it as quick as possible to go through that we can talk about the implications on a family level. So the 3-dimensional representation now brings in your interest, your skill set, and your psychological profile. And so how is that being measured? Remember when Google came out and they started to measure the metadata? It was like beginning of the 2000s that they started to have anonymized data on what you're looking for, your search terms. When you go to Amazon, it finds out what you're interested in. eBay does the same thing. Walmart does the same thing when you're online. So collection of metadata with an anonymized marketing or advertising address. And you can look that up. Go to your Google account and search for your advertising address. Everybody, each individual participant on the internet who uses Google has an individual marketing or advertising address. So all your search terms, what you're looking for, what your children are looking for when they're Googling something or looking for something while your email account is attached to that, is going into the collection of these metadata. And these metadata are the third dimension on the new measurement. So moving into a globalized world with payments through cryptocurrencies that are now borderless, or that will be borderless in the near future, requires a new approach of governance. And that new governance is a privatized governance. Pope Francis came out on May 2nd, and he promulgated in the Papal Academy in Rome that we need to become a different civilization on the planet to save the planet for the challenges that we're facing. And therefore, he promulgated that he wants to see a government that is centralized and that gives out administrative tasks to non-government organizations or private corporations that would supplant something what we today call a government. Hello?
Miles, you still there? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. I've been listening intently to what you've been saying. So that didn't work so well in the Soviet Union when they had centralized planning. But you're talking about taking the centralized planning and telling private corporations what they will and won't do. Is that right?
Well, it is more sophisticated than that. We're looking at a stream of data that you produce every day. Every phone call you make, every commercial interaction and looking for something, purchasing something is a data point. So you became a node in that three-dimensional chessboard, and that three-dimensional chessboard is now being administrated by private corporations.
Let's talk more about this when we come back. It's quite frightening, but yeah, we've seen the evidence, we've seen the symptoms. We'll be right back with Miles and Joey. Joey's in Michigan, Miles is in Europe, I'm in Missouri for the time being. Miles, please continue. You're talking about data points and tracking our every move.
So just listening to the ads in the break just gives you a clue on what it means. Like your show is the nuts and bolts show, and you get the Pennzoil advertising for engine oil, but you got the advertising on the show for Alexa. So Alexa is one of the data point gathering tools of the future, and you and I would not use that, but if you look into the household of millennials or of the generation global, today 18 years old, or up to 18 years old, they're using these interfaces like you would use your computer keyboard to write an email. So these are the data entry points where huge computer grid, decentralized computer arrays now do calculate supply and demand in certain regions of the world, and therefore plan what needs to be produced or what needs to be planned for production in the future for that environment where the administration wants to develop it to. What do you think about that?
Miles, question.
Joey?
Modification. This is done on a cellular basis, whether it's 2D or 3D. It's done on a cellular basis through what? Electrical waves, nanoparticles?
Yeah, we come to that. Yeah,
okay, but question two is there a way to diffuse that as well?
Okay, we come to that as well. So what the new paradigm we live under, you are being looked at as a so-called cellular automaton. Mark that word down. It is important for you to familiarize yourself with the cellular automaton. And I give you a background on that. back in the Second World War, Turing was the guy in Great Britain that was put, he was a scientist, and he was put on the task to break the Enigma code. Therefore, he developed a computer system to look at each individual set of codes. To break a code, he needed to look at each individual set and on the probabilities on it to be present at a certain time. So therefore, his mathematical model was the model of a cellular automaton, that you have a three-dimensional representation of a code to break. And that was taken by MIT with DARPA grants, and it was applied to the general population of the global population on planet Earth. So the digitalization that you can see that now children are being digitalized in school, that India has the digital ID program with 10-print and biometrics. China has the social credit score system rolled out in over 33 cities. And we have the same thing with authentication on every Apple or Samsung or Huawei or whatever phone, where you put your fingerprint in. And then you need to have another biometric authentication in the future for accessing your bank account or any kind of financial transaction. So the cellular automaton, are you at your computer, Vincent?
Yes, I am.
Okay, please type in MIT remote-controlled drones. When you look at the remote-controlled drones, it is a mechanical representation of what is being done on a global population base. It is one computer steering a division, an army of drones in terms of their movements. Therefore, the room has to have cameras all over the place, sensory input to one computer that now can pinpoint each individual drone, aka cellular automata, to tell it where to move. Did you find it?
Yes, I did. And some of these drones, they're gas-powered, and they can stay in the air for 5 days at a time.
Well, don't look at the gas-powered ones. Just look at the ballet dance that they did. You can, to give you another example, it's Cirque du Soleil drone ballet. Cirque du Soleil drone ballet. So the Cirque du Soleil had a piece where you had a craftsman making lamp shields. And suddenly these lamp shields start to dance, and he can command them with the fingers, with gesture movement. And it's a ballet. So these drones are the cellular automaton, and the craftsman is telling the drones how to move and what kind of movement pattern. So when we look at that on a global civilization, how is this being applied right now while we're talking onto a global population? How did we become a cellular automaton? Do you see the ballet dance, the Cirque du Soleil?
No, I do not have that in front of me. But
okay, good.
But please continue. Please continue.
So, class, I would like you to find MIT remote-controlled drones and how they fly, fly in an 8 or in a formation, and how this is being done. And look at the cameras and the sensors in the room that feed one computer that then determines each individual route in a three-dimensional room, in a three-dimensional space. So let's apply that to a human population. A human population is nothing else than a vessel in space. We are moving on the planet freely in space. So in order to change your interaction or how you think or what you should do, the Chinese are using a so-called social credit score. They are a communist country, and with a communist country, they don't care about your feelings and how you think about it. It's just been rolled over you. And public bashing for walking over the street on a red light, or littering, the facial picture is being shown at the bus station next to you, that you can be publicly bashed by others that see that. When you ride on a train, you're being told to leave the train as you entered it, and if you find litter or something that belongs into the waste bin, then you need to pick it up, and you will earn social credit score points for your behavior. How is this being done in the United States right now, or in Europe? We don't have the approach with social credit score yet, maybe in the future. Right now it's being done through nudging you to doing something because you have a benefit for it. So a very simple representation of that is when you Google something, or you're looking for something on eBay, you want to purchase engine oil, and you're looking for the best price. Suddenly you get advertising. You just get off your computer, you go to the kitchen, get a glass of water, come back, and suddenly when the next page you visit, you will see that advertising now shows you what you're looking for, or it nudges you to look for something, for another brand of oil, or for something else that is in that environment that you might need as well. So advertising was weaponized in 1999 to 2003 with the dot-com bubble, with the algorithms to track, trace, validate you, and to give you the opportunity to vote, like give a thumbs up or a thumbs down on your customer experience. And in using the rating system, when you rate somebody, the rating is going two ways. So you rate somebody, and because the way how you rated somebody or something, it determines how you think and feel, and it is being put in as a data point into your digital representation of yourself, your digital file. That experience is going to be enhanced in the future with a more sophisticated interaction in terms of smart dust that is already being sprayed with the geoengineering that is going on. So these are chips that are embedded deeply in your skin, in your fibers, in your lungs, in your hair. Or when you go shopping, then you grab a box and you look at it, and that box, then the paint can be tainted with smart dust already. So now you can track and trace somebody electronically without even touching you. If you want to look at that in particular, look at a so-called Google talk on identification and data safety. There are a couple of Google talks that talk about microchips that will help you for authentication or access to restricted areas. There you find these chips. Some of them are ingestible. They stay in 14 days. Others are so small they embed in your skin, and they track and trace you. So a government is not necessary anymore in terms of a regional place. Now you have a computer system that replaced your administration for decision-making and production, logistics, infrastructure, and nudging you into a new paradigm because you are getting the opportunity to get something cheaper or to be part of a community that helps the planet, to save the earth. And so little girls are targeted, like from age 10 on, to be more vegan, to not eat meat anymore. And that is because of changing the climate, saving the earth. And so your children are coming home from school and are telling you, oh, we learned fascinating things on how we can save the earth. Okay, kiddo, sit down, have your steak. No, we can't eat steak. You know, you're killing the planet. Mom, Dad, you are the enemy. I only hear silence.
Well, that's because everybody's shocked. Everybody's numb at what you're saying, and it's absolutely true. And all of us at USA Prepares can visualize exactly what you're saying. The system is turning the children against the parents because of what we do, like eating meat. We'll be right back with Miles and Joey. Absolutely fascinating discussion today. Joey, you've been very quiet, patiently waiting. You have any comments?
I'm just thinking we got to go to a fast food restaurant after the show for lunch and get a nanotized, supercharged, cheap meal so we can become a better receptor and a greater servant for the future needs of our, what's the word, nightmare?
Planet. So let me
Miles?
tackle the question that you asked, Joe.
Yeah.
How does that work on an individual level, and why do people change individually, and why don't you know anymore who you're dealing with, even if it's in your family unit? That leads to confusion. So the priming of the population is going on for at least 10 years and putting things out that makes the body more conductive. We can today see people on X-band radar, what we couldn't see them 15, 20 years ago on X-band radar. When the military was looking for refugees coming through certain places, they used X-band radar to find them in the forest, in the woods, and in valleys where they were not visible. Now they are. What does that mean for you on an individual scale? Being more conductive, because you have material embedded in your body, makes yourself receptive to waves that come through 4G or a little later on with 5G. And with being provided through information technology over the internet, the special deals, because you're so special and such an individualist, it's just that the me first is being entrained to, if I do this, I get that. If I do this, I get that. So it's not, if I do this for my family would have the benefit. No, our children are being entrained because of their information that they provide to an artificial intelligence much deeper and quicker than we have been in the last 30 years. What collection time was applied on us is like 10 years. Now you have the psychologic diagram of somebody within only 14 months. So the changes that means is that the family unit, and especially the single moms, will have a very hard life from now on, because the separation of the family unit is being accelerated through individualism, individual nudging and doing something, joining certain groups to change something, to protect something, or to save the planet, is running full bore. So this is where we are. And everything that you see on the news in terms of there is this conflict and this government did this, and the Republicans and the Democrats, is only a paradigm to keep your mind occupied in a place that is comfortable for you because you know it for so many years. Meanwhile, that other system has been born underneath it, and every kind of conflict, war, and natural disaster is going to be used to implement the centralized data gathering, analysis, and planning further into a region. It's called dominating the dominion of a terrain. And this is how I close this one here. So if you have questions, go.
Miles, even if there was a complete, the grid collapse, this system is so well embedded into the system, it'll run off the Ethernet of the universe, and it won't need to be empowered. It'll be just self-renewing on its own, true or false?
Correct. And it runs over your emergency response networks.
So is there a way to simplify your body to make it less receptive?
High vitamins, high minerals, and stay alkaline. That's the only thing you can do. If you don't do that, you just fall completely for it.
How about carbon 60, Miles?
Very good. That's good to clean you out.
So to be less susceptible to these microwave frequencies, we've got to get the materials out of our bodies. And I assume they are metallic. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So we need to purge our systems. Miles, thanks so much for calling in from Europe. Joey, thanks so much for making this happen. Miles, can you come back? Can you come back some other time?
Sure.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen.